12.1 has been announced. Earlier this week, we were given the full info about the raid, dungeon pool, loot changes, and class changes. I have been playing around on the PTR, and I will go over some of the details that might have been missed. So to talk about things related to the raid, they initially announced that they were reimagining world bosses and putting them in lairs with a mythic difficulty. Now, it wasn't certain what the intention here was. Some people theorized it would be easy like a Mythic 0 dungeon. But I managed to find the entrance to the lair on PTR, and I could actually go in and pull the boss on mythic difficulty. The boss is called Nimrita Wavecaller, and it appears to be a real mythic boss. There are orbs that have to be soaked by different players. There is a wave of murlocs that must be knocked or gripped to remove a protective shield, and there is a wave mechanic where you have to run to the safe spot. The boss has a dungeon journal where it drops 1 out of 6 mythic loot. The loot is just generic, not particularly impressive. There is an int trinket, I'm not sure how good it will be. I am not sure if it's going to be as good as Gaze or if it will just be kind of mid. I actually ended up going into the world boss difficulty as a tank and soloed it. It dropped me 1 piece of personal non-warbound loot, so it seems they've gone away from the warbound world boss loot. I haven't been able to test whether it is personal loot or group loot on Mythic. So from everything we have seen, this actually looks to be a real mythic boss in a 1-boss instance, much like Chimeras or Rotmire. It's also flex mythic 15 to 25 man, so it could possibly inherit the lockout rules from Sporefall. It definitely seems like the lair concept is a way for Blizzard to get more use out of the world boss designs they make, while also fixing the issue of zone lag when a world boss is pulled. So, with the assumption that the world boss is a real mythic boss, this gives us a 9 boss tier, with 1 boss in the Tidebound Grotto and 8 bosses in the Venomous Abyss. Now the Venomous Abyss looks like a standard 8 boss raid. We don't have the maps yet, so I can't see the boss order, but I'm not expecting anything special there. There is a boss that appears to be full single target with no ads, which is something we were desperately missing from the current tier, and the last boss resembles a Hydra in the ground. We saw a glimpse of her platform during the preview. Raid testing will be done in the next 3 weeks, so I will have more info on the raid bosses then. The end boss mythic mount is not finished yet, it is missing some textures. There were a lot of loot changes announced pertaining to the raid, vault, catalysts, and both void core systems introduced last patch. Now the thing that everyone's talking about, endgame Biss is now a lot more raid oriented, with every item of the last 2 bosses in raid dropping at 9 out of 6 myth. Myth track has been power crept, we have now surpassed myth track, we have myth track 2. Because of the raw stat gain from eye level, every non-trinket item of these 2 bosses will most likely be Biss. This includes a full crit neck, a cloak, several weapons such that there is 1 usable for every single spec, 2 or 3 armor type pieces, and 4 trinkets that may or may not be good. Now I have seen some miscalculations on what the eye level advantage from this is. The raw Biss eye level of an M+ main without CE is 327.5. The theoretical Biss for a CE raider is between 331.4 to 332.5. This variance is because some armor types have more drops than others. So at face value, it looks like there is a 4 to 5 eye level diff. But Blizzard have announced that Ascendant Void Cores are returning midway through the season under the name Ascendant Venom Stones. They now only upgrade for 6 eye levels to the equivalent of Myth 8, but they can additionally be used on necks. This brings the M+ Biss to 329.37, which is 2.5 eye levels below the average CE Raider Biss. This also does not take into account that extra gear from the 0.5 and 0.7 patch has yet to be announced. There is already confirmed to be a new 1 boss raid in the 0.5 patch, which may bring extra loot opportunities like Sporefall did. Every item of the end boss is a cantrip as well. The items all have only a single stat, and then have a proc that increases that stat by a significant amount, but reduces all other stats by a 1/6 of that amount. Now this cantrip is something that is not exclusive to CE Raiders, because they are changing the vault for Heroic Raid. Now, Heroic Raid will award Myth Track 1 out of 6 in the vault. This also applies to bonus rolls, which are returning. So you can theoretically go into Heroic Raid and achieve full Mythic Biss at 6 out of 6 Myth, or 8 out of 6 for items that you can ascend. So the quality of gear in Biss will be no different between Raiders and M+. The only difference will be item level. Now because of this, they have to incentivize raiding Mythic in the vault. So to do that, you will now only receive fully upgraded 6 out of 6 Mythic items from your Mythic Raid Vault slots, regardless of which bosses you kill. You could kill the first and second boss, and in your vault will be a 6 out of 6 Mythic Raid item. This will end up being a huge crest save early on from Mythic Raid, although it does bring a little bit of a concern that a Mythic Raider might actually end up running out of things to use Myth Crests on. Speaking of crests, it has been data mined that the crest system has gone back to the old ramping crest cost from Midnight Beta. I think this is simply an oversight and not intentional. They probably reused old code and didn't realize surprised that it modified the crest costs. If this goes through, it would make no sense considering the free 6 out of 6 items from Vault would completely defeat the purpose of the ramping costs. For this video, I'm going to treat the crest change as unintended, and if it is intended, I expect something to change. I did mention that bonus rolls are coming back. They're confirmed to be available as a Vault reward for tokens, much like they are now, except from the start of the season. And then, 8 weeks into the season, you will be able to freely redeem 1 per week. They have halved the raid cost of rolling, so now M+ is only half as efficient to roll, but it is partially counteracted by Heroic Raid being an actual viable roll choice. There is no Heroic Week for the raid, but there will likely be a pre-season Delve Week. It has not been confirmed if there will be a Vault from the Delve Week like we had in Menaforge, but if there is, it will definitely be the optimal play to take a bonus roll from that Vault. Also, the last big thing with gearing is the Catalyst. No one quite knows what they are doing with the Catalyst right now. If we go off tooltips, then you can now get Cata charge drops before you get 4 set, but it takes 5 charges to Cata 1 item, which sounds pretty excessive, but also something they'll probably announce if it was true. They also have the 2k M+ achievement giving 3 Cata charges instead of 1, so we really don't know what's going on. It's all up in the air. I'm waiting for an official post. But if you do end up getting enough Cata charges to get 4 set without raiding, that would greatly change the necessity to split Heroic for most guilds, because the only real benefit from Heroic splits would be extra trinkets. And all of this is probably because they are actually changing how the Catalyst works. It will no longer change the stats of the item you insert, it will only change it to tier. For example, you put a crit verse chest in, you get a crit verse chest out, even if your tier chest is a different stat. And this means there's no such thing as a tier off piece. You can run 5 set with whatever stats you want, provided you can get the drops. This does have a downside of not being able to freely catalyze pieces that have bad stats, but I believe it will lead to more interesting itemization as a whole. Also, I believe the Catalyst will work the same as it does now for cloak, boots, wrist, and belt, but I am unable to test because the gear that I found on the PTR currently catalysts to Season 1 gear at eye level 57. Overall, I think these changes are not as negative towards M+ players as purported. In the early weeks, raiders will have more eye level than usual, but anyone who is doing Mythic alt raids for the first few bosses will be better off early than the current season because they will have access to max Mythic Vault. One could also save up bonus rolls from Vault to spend on Mythic Raid in later weeks. Once raiders start getting to CE, they will definitely start pulling ahead in eye level, but I expect the Ascendant Venom Stones to come out before anyone hits full BIS, making the difference between a raider and an M+er probably about 3%. And this is subject to be even less after extra loot sources that may be unveiled in the 0.5 and 0.7. So this all circles back to the old dinar debate on how much Mythic raiders should be rewarded, so I won't go too much further into it. I do think something that is a bit egregious with this system is that Cloth and Plate get 1 whole extra armor type item at 9 out of 6. Now speaking of M+, they did announce the dungeon pool. It is 1 new dungeon, the 4 other Midnight dungeons, and then King's Rest, Ruby Life Pools, and Temple of Sethrulus. This is a very unpopular rotation. Most people did not like these dungeons coming back, and there has been a big negative response. But I think that this kind of thing, it's best to wait and see. They have done good redesigns of dungeons in the past, so it is entirely possible that they will redesign these dungeons to not have crazy pressure points like they did before. I've also seen people scared about the number of kicks in Murder Row or Den of Narrowlack. I am not concerned. They will definitely lower them like they did to the M+ dungeons back in Midnight Beta. I tried, but I cannot currently enter the dungeons, so I can't tell you what's changed, but a lot of bosses have completely different dungeon journals, so I think there has been a lot of redesign. There is one thing that we have seen that is different. So in Temple of Sethrulus, the orb room, you used to have to throw an orb and it was really buggy, it could fail and you could not progress the dungeon. The dungeon was banned in MDI for this reason. Apparently when the dungeon came out in Time Walking, they actually fixed this by completely changing the orb minigame, so now you just have to have the whole group channel into both orbs to open the door. They also added 2 trinkets to these dungeons. Temple of Sethrulus has an int trinket that is a damage proc on use, and King's Rest has an int on use trinket that gives haste after a channel, much like Puzzle Box. This trinket is actually exactly like an int Puzzle Box, same amount of stats and everything. I am expecting M+ testing to begin next week, so I'll give more news on dungeons then. Now they have done a lot of class changes. I'm not going to go over all of them, but there are some notable changes to some raid buffs. Rogue's Atrophic Poison is now baseline 4%, which with a talent provides a 4.8% DR to your entire raid. It also has a duration of 60 seconds seconds, so it is a lot easier to maintain on targets that you aren't actively hitting. This means it's very unlikely you will drop the rogue unless there is an environmental damage boss where the poison doesn't actually work. A single hunter may now apply 5 hunter's marks, meaning you won't ever need to stack hunters on a boss unless it has different phases. Note that this is not an AoE hunter's mark, you have to apply all 5 marks one by one, which does sound kind of annoying, especially when going pack to pack in M+. And Sky Fury once again does not really affect Ret Paladin. They also redesigned Innovate. It now regenerates a flat 25% mana for the healer, meaning there is no weak aura requirement to track Innovate, and no macro requirement to call for Innovates at specific times. Defensives were largely untouched for most classes. Specs considered overpowered like DPS, DK, and DH saw no defensive nerfs, while Frost Mage got their double barrier removed and moved to Arcane, effectively making Frost Mage more squishy and Fire Mage the same as it was prior. Mistweaver did have Spinning Crankick nerfed, but other healers did not get much to make them better. Resto Shaman and Holy Priest basically got no changes, and Holy Paladin literally got no changes. Holy Paladin was not mentioned once in these patch notes, which is pretty much the same with Enhancement Shaman. Enhancement Shaman didn't really get changed. The only thing we got was a healing buff to counteract the global health buff. It's like it's Christmas time and you're a kid and you're there with all your siblings and they're all getting all these big presents, and then it's time to get your present. You look under the tree, there's nothing left under the tree and you get nothing. I was planning on releasing a Shaman video this week, but I don't really have much to talk about right now. Elemental Shaman got their overloads nerfed and a bunch of spells buffed that really benefit Farseer, but the tier set is bugged right now, so I haven't extensively tested it. They do normally release big class changes in the 2nd and 3rd week as well, so I am hoping a few classes just had their changes delayed to give them more time. I definitely hope Enhancement Shaman gets some modification to the way their Doomins procs works at the very least, because they did say they were reducing classes damage in cooldowns, and enhancement is a culprit in that. In the next few weeks, I will probably make a Shaman specific video. They did release all the tier set bonuses. These tier sets are the first time in 5 seasons that we have standard, non-themed, spec-specific tier sets that aren't designed to be purposefully weak, except they are weak. Some of these tier sets look very uninteresting. Like for Blood Decay, they get some attack speed and death and decay damage, which doesn't really do damage, or Survival Hunter gets damage on Raptor Strike and Bomb. Some classes get exciting tier sets. The Ellie Shaman one looks pretty cool, so I hope they have redesigns coming for some of the ones that just look bad. The ping changes are quite nice. You can ping any ability to show its cooldown. I tried to be toxic and exploit the system to ping some Bleach, but I couldn't find a way. The items you can ping are on a whitelist, so you can only really ping potions, and you can't ping macros, so changing the tooltip won't work. There is also a nice new macro which is at cursor ping, which will always ping the ground and never ping a unit, so you can finally ping a location and not have it stick to some massive boss model. All in all, I am excited to play a season where they are actually changing a lot of systems, and I really think the loot changes and dungeon pool will not be as bad as people think. I am of the opinion that the way they go about first week class changes is wrong though. I do think every class should always get something, just to bring a little bit of hope.